Still Breakfast Central News Central today, the 20th day of November 2019. It's a Wednesday, so let's keep it rolling now. We're moving straight to business as usual. We're looking at the financial planning for divorced women or widows. And we are joined by Raphael Emenyonu, who's from ARM Pensions, who will be giving us an in-depth understanding on why we need to plan for the future. Well, welcome, Raphael. Morning, it's Breakfast Central.
Good morning.
On News Central.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're talking about financial planning for divorced and women and widows. So first of all, are there financial options for them?
For women and widows,
yeah.
For divorced women and widows,
yeah.
Yes, there are financial options. I mean, so when you're in the union, it's always expected
okay, your union, you mean the marriage now?
The marriage,
okay.
yes. When you're in that union or partnership or whatever you could call it,
yeah.
It's important that you begin to plan. You know, there's this myth by most women that speaks to my husband will take care of me. My husband would. My husband will buy me a house. My husband will take care of the kids. My husband will buy me a car. My husband will virtually do everything. You know, but for some reasons, maybe you don't even know that he has one or two other girlfriends out there. You know, so it's important that as a woman, I mean, once you get your job and you begin to have those finances, also begin to plan. You know, for yourself.
Well, how informed are women about these, options?
I would say 20 to 80% ratio.
That's in ratio of those who have been through this.
Yes,
process
those that are currently in the process, about 20% in terms of those that are informed about those financial options. 20%. Those that are not informed, about 80%. And the reason is because, you know, what I spoke about earlier. Some just choose to leave everything in the hands of the man. Others just don't seem to be interested. You know, while some are really not educated, they're ignorant. They don't have those information. They don't even know that they could do such things. You know, but currently, I think I would say the ratio of 20% of women are actually informed and they're actually in that process.
Is that a good enough number?
Not at all. Not at all. So there's still a lot of work for us to do in this part of the world. You know, to educate women, to pass out that information, to let them know that. As they always say, what a man can do, they can also do better. So they need to pay attention to those things. They need to have those discussions.
Why do you think that happens? Is it because that no one really expects to have a fallout of a marriage or to lose a loved one?
I think it has to do with our culture.
Okay.
Really, I think it has to do with our culture in this part of the world.
So you go in there knowing this is it. Nothing will happen.
And you leave everything in the hands of the man. You know, yeah.
Oh,
so I think essentially it's more about the culture, but I think it's something that we need to begin to change. We need to begin to speak to more often so that women can also begin to leverage and take that advantage and begin to have, I mean, even if nothing is going to happen, you need to think about also supporting that man at some point in the future. You know, because I mean, it could be broke.
What does this relate vis-a-vis, from your experience as, being with ARM Pensions, as investment experts? What about, the income, especially if it's a working woman who's going through a divorce or divorcee or losing her husband, Does this have to, what about her own earnings, income? Is it being brought to the debate, or do we have to just leave that out to when they finish the courts or divorce processes, the legal process of the divorce itself?
So for most women, if I understand that question correctly, so what you're speaking to is, why is she not planning with her income for herself? So for them, I think it's more about
especially when it's documented that she has an income, she has a business, she's an earner.
So they believe that the other responsibilities for the kids, for the house, for the household, and the rest of those things is strictly the man's responsibility.
Okay.
So for them, they either focus on their families, or they focus on how to be trendy, and how to ensure that they keep themselves looking good.
Okay, so this doesn't matter.
No. I don't think it has to do with income, because again, most women don't even speak about it in their marriages. They don't even talk about. They don't engage the male counterpart to say, about financial planning, essentially in the marriages. A lot of women, I think they shy away from it. You know, they don't sit down. It's not one of the discussions that they have regularly, which I think it should be. You know.
Okay, I don't want to smirk at it, but sometimes they say women is the better planner of their household.
Yes, because they can actually get you to where you want to be in terms of your finances. You know, but it's just that most of them don't. They just feel it's your responsibility as a man, and you need to just.
Okay, let's talk about tax breaks available for divorced women or widowed women in terms of that kind of area. Are they avenues for them? Is there any reprieve in that area?
So we can look at it from two angles. Today in this economy, because again there's this mandatory pension scheme. So if, like the example you made earlier, if the woman is working and she has her own income and is mandatory in her place of work, that they set up the retirement savings account for her, automatically she's enjoying that tax benefit because it's deducted from source and she's enjoying that. If the spouse or herself also puts in place a trust, you know, which is also another form of financial option, just to ensure that things are running smoothly while you're still alive, that's the trust. So if the spouse puts in place a trust or herself puts in place a trust, she enjoys some sort of estate duty as well on that particular product. So I think those are the two key opportunities or advantages in the area of tax.
Right.
You know,
but the scenarios can differ. Now there can be situations where the widow or divorcee doesn't really benefit from their spouse. So what happens in that kind of situation?
So she's divorced and she doesn't really benefit financially,
or widowed.
Oh, that's a tough one. So that's why I said that. I mean, as soon as she gets into that union or she has a job or something that she's doing, she needs to begin to plan. Okay. You know, but most importantly, I think if they have those discussions, while the marriage is still on, it's important that she speaks to the guy about setting up a will, setting up a trust. Setting up a will doesn't mean you're going to die the next moment. I mean, you've acquired all these things. It's just important that your loved ones, I mean, maybe it's not even the guy's intention, not to put things in place or not to ensure that they have information about all of these assets or investment that he's done, but probably because he didn't have those information as well. So it's important that the woman should help out, provide those information, have that discussion, let him put a will in place or a trust. A will puts everything together in a document, and it goes to the right beneficiary so she doesn't struggle at the end of the day if the inevitable happens.
I would like to talk about, platforms, that really give, women, that offer them, this financial option, especially when it comes to literacy. On the continent, even in Nigeria here, about when you're going through a divorce or getting widowed, where can they go to now, to really start getting this information and getting the options sorted, whether it has happened or it's in the process of happening?
Excuse me. So they can speak to us at ARM.
Okay.
We have a sister subsidiary, ARM Trustees.
Okay.
They can also speak to us at ARM Investment Managers, just to get some financial advice, just to get other information on finance, on financial planning, and they can read a lot of financial books.
It does.
Because that helps as well.
Is that enough?
Oh yeah, because that helps as well.
Online.
Online, buy the books and read, just to educate yourself, get information, source for information. That also helps, because again, this is a developing world. So there might be things that are not here in Nigeria that are already existing in other parts of the world. So even if you relocate with your family, I mean, today everybody's moving to Canada.
Especially when you're researching and it doesn't really apply here, that's another issue.
Yeah, but everybody's moving to Canada these days, so
we can
also help you.
We're not encouraging everyone to elope, because at the end of the day, this is Africa. Africa is still here. So it's good to talk with your spouse before anything happens. Whether it's a divorce or before divorce or perhaps unfortunate in the passing away of the husband. Well, we're talking about the women here who find themselves, left exposed should these kind of situations that, many don't plan for, because you go in, you answer better for worse. And look at it where we are now, it's almost like you can't take out the legal aspect of what your options are when you're talking about the financial aspect. So I wonder if, you have any take on this.
No, so you can take out the legal aspect. I mean, because it's important, which is why I mentioned earlier that you need to have that conversation, But my take on this again is, it is important that you don't leave everything in the hands of the husband. Also plan.
Okay.
So
that
let's try and change that
financial
culture.
planning for the
You also need to get information for yourself. Begin to get that knowledge on how to plan finances, so that it doesn't come to you as a shock when the inevitable happens. Part of what the spouse could have done, probably in the area of education, aside the wills, the trust that we mentioned earlier, is that they probably would have put in place a good education insurance.
Okay.
To protect the children's education and all that. But there are other things that you also need to do on your own. So it's important that once you begin to acquire assets as a woman as well, begin to speak to a financial advisor, begin to get information about financial planning, begin to plan. Even if the guy stays forever, I mean, it's the same thing on the male side. The wife also passes on at some point, But because it's a responsibility that you carried all along, I mean, sometimes you'll be able to continue with it. But for the women folks, it's very important that they also begin to get involved.
Yeah. What would you suggest before they walk down the aisle? Before I do.
I mean, some of them already have jobs before they walk down the aisle. Okay. So it's important that they begin to. I mean, even if it's for that day, that wedding itself, you can begin to plan for it. It's a goal. So you can begin to plan for the wedding itself, begin to set funds aside, begin to look at those, begin to seek for those information and how you can also plan for the wedding.
Yeah, so basically
make the money work for you.
We're zeroing down to financial planning, because financial education, then you're safe even before you walk down the aisle.
Yeah, financial literacy. Yeah. Very important.
Because that's what you can bring to the table when you're settled with your husband or your spouse, and you can now bring in the debate, okay, this is what I have on the side, and we can start to plan this and talk about it. Wow. Doesn't leave our women, this is quite interesting debate, because nobody talks about this pretty much in society, because it's basically, like you said, it's always left for the men to just handle. But when such situations happen, especially when it comes to death, the passing away of the husband, the woman is just left, bare, oftentimes, with nothing to fall back on, whether from the banks or financially and from the law. And especially when these women actually do even have an income, so that becomes you don't really come back from this, right? As they say, because one thing is mourning and another thing is chasing financial options.
Yes. So in having that discussion in the marriage, part of the things that the male folks needs to put into consideration is either you get a will. Now, what that will does, like I explained earlier, is to bring everything together, all the assets you've acquired. Okay. Get a will, or you get a trust. A trust can begin to run even while you're alive. And then you can also have insurance as part of it. Okay. Now, all of these things will ensure that should the inevitable happen, the wife, she has got a lot of things to fall back on. So there's a will. She doesn't need to go through the stress of letter of administration, the probate and all that. Once the will is executed, she begins to have access to all of these assets. If there's a trust, that even begins to run while the husband is still alive. So there's a tendency that she has information to that particular trust, while the girl is still alive. And then for insurance, especially in the area of education, which is one of the most important area to both partners in marriage for the kids, if there's a life insurance and education insurance for the child, once the inevitable happens, the insurance company is expected to take care of the child's education all through. So that sort of dream education that you have for the child is still fulfilled, while you're still not there. So these legal documents are very important, just so that the loved ones, which is the wife, the widow, and the children, the loved ones can continue to live the sort of life that you want them to live while you're not there as a guy. I can tell you some life experience. I mean,
feel free to share.
From one of our subsidiaries, ARM Pensions, right? One of the subsidiaries in the ARM group. We've seen situations where the main beneficiary of the account passes on.
Okay.
And then it took like a year or two because of the probate process in the country for them to be able to get a letter of administration. In the process, the wife had nothing she was doing, while the guy was alive. Now that the guy has passed on, she couldn't even have access to the millions of naira in that account because of this legal document. So it took them a while. She had to pull the kids out of school. Some even come to the office and cry the whole day. But there's a law binding the process. So we can't just begin to pay, those benefits just like that. So if there was a will in place, it wouldn't have taken that long.
Or trust.
Or trust. It wouldn't have taken that long. And for a will, your bank account is an asset. It can go into the will.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be physical assets like a car, a house, or whatever. The bank account is an asset.
That could be valued.
Yeah, so it can go into the will. So immediately that is even executed, they can begin to have access to the bank account, the funds you have in the bank account.
And from that document, basically, it's a flyover.
Exactly. So it's important. So if women can read a lot and they get all of those information, they can speak to the guy.
What about our men? Don't you think men have a lot to play too in this? Speaking about financial literacy, financial investment, and why securing it, also bringing this discourse to the table, why this needs to be done, just in case,
Oh yeah. So if you look at the ratio, I mean, like when we started the discussion, we looked at the ratio of likely women that are involved in financial planning and men that aren't, and those that weren't. So if you look at the ratio, there are a lot more men involved than women.
True.
So for the men, there's a possibility that number will continue to increase, as the other men rub off on them and this information passes.
Because they are largely breadwinners, expectedly.
So it's expected that number would definitely increase. But for the women,
it's where they work.
It's low, and we need to work on it. We really need to work on it. So we need to get a lot more information out there and encourage them a lot more than, they say, what a man can do, they can do better. So we need to encourage them.
Might as well start now. Well, thank you so much, Raphael Emenyonu from ARM Investments Managers Limited. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, indeed.